So great. My name is Adam Forbes. I am a current doctoral candidate at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia. I used to be a itinerant adaptive PE teacher in Fairfax County Public Schools. It's been nice to kind of come back and present on different sessions and being a part of the Fairfax community. And Kato, I'll have you kind of introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Doyle. I'm in my 8th year of being an itinerant adapted PE teacher in Fairfax County. And today we're going to talk to you about creating community with families.
So just in terms of an agenda to kind of get us focused on things that Katie and I will be talking about in today's session. First, we're going to talk about the why, just in terms of creating that community with families and really tying it to adaptive physical education. And then we'll get into the what, basically the different resources, strategies, examples that we'll share, some things to think about just in terms of making that connection with families. And then last, we'll talk about the how, and basically just those things that you're creating and utilizing, just how you would share that out with families. I mentioned I was a doctoral student, and I've been doing a lot of research specifically on this topic. So I just wanted to share and make some connections with the relationships that you have with your families to kind of tie into just the importance of really creating that community. Just in terms of researchers looking at parents and kind of what they perceive and think about when it comes to adaptive PE, just like we are really focusing on improving the physical activity of our students, families also understand the benefits when it comes to physical activity, whether it's decreases in health risks, improvements in physical, social, and cognitive development. So parents already have that understanding and they really value the benefits of physical activity. And I feel that could be a connection for us just in terms of creating that community. And other researchers have really dived into really understanding the relationship between parents, physical activity, and their children with disabilities. And studies have found that if parents do have competence, so they really understand um, physical activity, they know how to provide it for their children, and also they perceive enjoyment within physical activities, that their children will more likely than not have higher levels of physical activity. So essentially, if parents do have competence and they do perceive enjoyment, they kind of open that gate for their children to also participate in physical activity. And then lastly, focused on studies that interviewed families when it came to really understanding what they knew about adaptive PE. Parents mentioned that they really wanted to learn more about what adaptive PE was and how it could benefit their child at the school, and also how adaptive PE could also help them, the parents, really provide those opportunities outside the school setting and in the community. So I think for us here, just to kind of understanding where parents are when it comes to understanding physical activity, knowing that if parents do have that competence and they do have that enjoyment, then they will provide those opportunities to their children. And just parents already have that curiosity to learn a little bit more and engage more with our profession, adaptive PE. So kind of looking more closely at what parents and families say about adaptive PE, and unfortunately, it's not too positive just in terms of parent perceptions about adaptive PE. So the first point that I wanted to share is that when parents were asked about adaptive PE, they didn't really know much about what it was. They didn't know the connection of adaptive PE to physical activity. It was kind of more of they just weren't aware of these services for their child. Also, some parents mentioned that they had a lot of limited opportunities to really connect with adaptive PE teachers. Although they really wanted that connection, they just didn't know how to approach adaptive PE teachers, didn't know what questions to ask. So they felt that there was a disconnect just in terms of that communication and that relationship. So if I were to just to stop at A and B, some might conclude, and researchers have concluded that, adaptive PE teachers, you all need to do a better job at connecting with parents. Here's some strategies that you can use in order to do that. But me being an adaptive PE teacher, I felt that there's a little bit more to it than kind of the surface level um, in terms of that interaction. So there was an additional aspect, which is point C, that most parents will really appreciate all the work that we do and the things that we're teaching their children, but they might not always hold adaptive PE in a high priority. So they might be focused on other aspects of their child's development. Adaptive PE is probably towards the bottom of a parent's priority. So they might not really engage if we are trying to reach out to them. Um, and they might not have that ability to really focus in on their child's physical activity development. So I don't want you to walk away after that last point and say, "Oh man, Adam said like, just give up." Like, parents are always not going to perceive adaptive P in a high light or a high priority. Um, but I'm telling you now, don't give up. And these things I just wanted to share, just in terms of better understanding how parents might perceive our profession and some of the ways and the challenges that we might face in order to develop that community. So understanding that some parents might not really care about adaptive P, others might be indifferent, and even others might really be all in when it comes to adaptive P. And I'm sure some of you have had interaction with parents that they were really invested in adaptive PE, that they became advocates, and they really supported the things that we were doing for the child at school, and also for them to be able to provide those opportunities outside the school setting. So I think for our job, I think, is to really keep that door open for parents when they are ready to engage and learn more about adaptive PE, sharing different resources like we'll talk about in today's session, just really instilling in families the benefits and the importance of adaptive physical education when it comes to their child's physical activity development. So essentially just being present with families, and that starts especially in the IEP meetings. It's a good way to get FaceTime with families, um, share student success stories, positive stories, student interests, being able to connect with families to ask what their preference is when it comes to communication. Um, and I think also one thing in the research that I'm doing is really visualizing all the great things that you're doing. So really sharing that video or that picture of, hey, your child was doing this particular activity. Look how great they were doing. Um, really helps parents to hopefully make that connection and to hopefully increase their priority and their value when it comes to the work that we do in order to teach children with disabilities. So we're going to transition now into the what, just different examples that you can think about utilizing in order to create that community with families. And the first one here is a parent interest form. So the document to the left is something that you can share out with families, kind of like a questionnaire, just some questions related to what things they do as a family when it comes to physical activity, what things their child is interested in, um, also, if there's any concerns when it comes to participating in adaptive PE or any type of physical activity setting, and then also really asking parents, "Hey, what do you see your child working on within adaptive PE?" It's kind of really engaging, getting feedback from parents. And then the document to the right is just ways that you can ask parents, "Hey, what's your preference when it comes to communication?" And also, a second important thing is to really ask if parents give permission in order for their child to have a photo taken or a video recorded of them, and also asking if they'd like to have that sent home to view and to kind of make that a visualization of adaptive PE.
And just so you all know, at the end of this, the resources are linked throughout our slides, and then there's also a resource tab that will be at the end. So this information will all be shared with you, and you can take it and tweak it to fit your needs and your family's needs. This is another sample that we'll look at. So this is just a Google form that I've shared with families at the start of the school year. So I'll give Adam a second here to pull that up. So similar, just seeing students' names, the parents' names, their preferred communication, if they're okay with pictures or videos being sent home. And then we'll see in a little bit a monthly newsletter that I sent home. So just giving consent that those pictures are shared in that. Seeing what activities they're involved in outside of school as far as the student and the family. And then for students that are new to me, I found it very beneficial to just ask what kind of ways they communicate with their students, what ways their student or child expresses themselves, what motivates them at home, and then any other information they might want me to know. This is a second family questionnaire that we can peek at. So this one will probably be more appropriate for any students that you have at that secondary transition age. So federal law says that should start at age 16, but depending on your state, that might start at a different age. For example, in Virginia, we start that at age 14. And so this is just seeing more about, again, getting those motivations and student interests, but seeing what activities they do as a family, if there's activities they want their student to or child to be involved in. And then towards the bottom, just seeing how that student would be able to access community centers. And if they have those skills that would be needed to do that. In that first family questionnaire that I went over, I mentioned a newsletter. So I found during COVID this to be really helpful in just sharing what we were learning. And it was something that I continued doing after COVID because I got such positive feedback from families. So I share pictures of the students, what we did that month, what activities, because I noticed too, a lot of times we would talk about certain activities and parents would be like, oh yeah, and they would think that their child couldn't do it. And so the pictures really show the way that they can do it and that they can participate in all of these activities that we have in our PE curriculum. And then I like to share ways that they can continue participating in those specific activities we learned about at home. And then just a little sneak peek into the next month, what units we'll be learning. Another option you might consider if monthly is too frequent for you is doing it quarterly. So this one on the right is another itinerant in our program. Dana DeVore, she likes to send them out quarterly to show all the fun things that they learned throughout that quarter. And then community-based instruction or field trips. So kind of celebrating or wrapping up at the end of units is a great way to incorporate these activities. So for example, I took one of my classes that has high support needs. We had our bowling unit for, we did bowling for our recreational unit, and then we went to a bowling alley. So you might work on those skills that I mentioned from that parent questionnaire with participating in the community. So you have to get certain shoes from the desk, so being able to share your shoe size or filling out a scorecard potentially. But I got great feedback from families after this, where one of the families, they ended up, this was one of their activities they would go do together as a family because they didn't think that their child would be successful in the bowling alley with the loud noises and if it's crowded, and the student really enjoyed it. So it was something they were able to do all together. And that's our hope, right? Is that this information that we share allows our kids to keep being active outside of school. So a couple other options. We are currently in our striking unit at my school. So I've heard of teachers that brought their classes to mini golf, or when I was in Wisconsin lacrosse for grad school, one of the teachers I worked with took her students out fishing after we practiced fishing in a unit, or we went to a roller rink after they did a rollerblading unit. So lots of different ways that you might incorporate that.
And then Katie, just let me know when you'd like to go to the next slide.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Then sports teams. So a great way to create that community connection with families and the students. So Special Olympics, a couple of the pictures here, the bottom left with the yellow jerseys, that was my unified basketball team last school year. And then the picture on the right, that's a Dana DeVore again. She took her class into the Little Feet meet. So lots of options through Special Olympics. Adapted sports leagues are also a common thing throughout the country. Reflecting on Wisconsin, again, I mentioned that previously, but really competitive leagues and teams that do wiffle ball, soccer, floor hockey. So different options depending on what your students are interested in or what the community might be interested in. We also have in Northern Virginia Power Soccer League. So that's that other picture one of our teachers coaches in. So just understanding or learning what through maybe the parent questionnaires or in communicating with your students what their interests are, and then going from there and what kind of programs or things that you'd be interested in sharing or starting.
And then you can also think about hosting school events, whether it's something that's additional that you plan or something that's attached to maybe a back to school night or open house. Um, Granted, kind of reflecting on all the things that we do as teachers, hosting something additional might be a little bit extra that we might not be inclined towards, but just an option for you to think about when it comes to creating that community with families. So Open Phys Ed, they have a family PE week, and you can sign up on their website, and they share different resources that you can use in order to invite families, invite the community to come and see all the amazing things that are happening in PE. You could also think about, I know field day is coming up in the next couple months, so that could be another opportunity, whether you're doing a field day with the school or an adapted field day, but inviting families to come volunteer or come see their child participate in a number of different physical activities will be another great way to kind of visualize and engage with families. And here's pictures to the left are just what it might look like when it comes to hosting an after school event focused on kind of connecting things that are happening in PE and letting families in the community know, like, hey, these are all the things that are happening in PE this year. Um, Food is a plus if you are thinking of hosting something, just to kind of have that as well. In the picture to the right, something that you can think about is hosting a training session with families. And that could be tied to different topics regarding adaptive physical education. And this one in particular is talking about at-home physical activity. So kind of talking with parents about different ways that they can help their child at home when it comes to prompts, equipment that they might use at the home, and different activities that they might use. This could be something that you do, after school. It could be something that's online that you host, or it could be something that, if there's another online webinar that your state adapted PE consortium is doing, that parents could also join and kind of learn, what adapted PE is, what adapted PE and the law says, and just to kind of develop that community amongst teachers and also families.
And then just sharing resources. So it could be related to the units or activities you're learning about in PE for that month, or again, from the quarter. So this is an example of a resource you might purchase to share, and it breaks down activities each week that you might do with your family or the families might do together. These are some resources that we share in our county just related to local opportunities. So summer camps are always a big one, ways to stay active when they're not in school. We have a Fairfax Falcons Paralympics team. So just figuring out what's going on in your community, what might connect with certain ages or certain ability levels, and sharing those out with families because they might not be aware of those opportunities. And then this is just another way that you might connect what you're doing in school to home. So if you're working on overhand throwing, sharing those cues or visuals on how to break it down, and then an activity that you can do with that skill and those visuals. So this is working on your overhand throw, and this is throwing your snowballs or the rolled up socks at a tower. And trying to destroy the tower. So thinking of ways that they might, if they don't have the certain equipment, what do they have at home that they could continue doing this learning?
So Katie and I just talked about the what, or basically all the different resources, different ways that you can connect with families. Really quickly, I'm going to go through just the how, or the modes of communication that you might utilize in order to share all those things with families. And just a reminder, just like we individualize instruction for students, just really understanding that some parents will have preferences when it comes to the way that you're communicating with them. So kind of also, and also at the same time, kind of thinking about you as us as teachers, just in terms of what is comfortable with us. So these are just the OGs. You could share things through email, phone, text. Some special education classroom teachers will use a communication log or an at-home folder that you can include things related to adaptive PE to share with families. If you want to get a little bit fancy, you can create a Google site just as a way that you can add all those different things that you're um, doing with teaching your students and resources to share with parents and families. And that way they can access it at any time. And just really quickly, Matt Barker, who has some presentations during this conference, and myself, we created a Google site template that you can utilize. We really tied it towards a lot of the different responsibilities that we as adaptive PE teachers have. But one spot here is family connection, where we were thinking of adding all those different resources that families could access. So this is just another opportunity, another way that you can kind of share out all those different things to make connections with families. And then if you want to get a little bit fancier, you can get social. And these are just three main ones focused on adaptive PE. So there's X, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. On the bottom there's some adaptive PE teachers that you can see how they kind of structure and utilize these particular social media accounts. One in particular I want to talk about was Facebook. One study created a web-based intervention. So they essentially created a Facebook group, invited parents to join that group, and every week the researchers would share out a kind of almost like a training focus that parents would utilize and teach their child at home. And towards the end of that intervention, parents really were satisfied with it, and that their children with Down syndrome really increased their gross motor skills. So just another example of just the importance of parents and making that connection, that they can really facilitate things that we're doing in the schools and take it outside and just really expand upon our students' progress within physical activity. And then you might also think about using apps, and these are just examples here. Class Dojo, Seesaw, Talking Points, Classly, Remind. I myself have used Class Dojo. I know other teachers have used Class Dojo and also Seesaw. So thinking about your special education classroom teachers and seeing if they utilize any apps, something that you might just be added onto as a co-teacher. That way you can just share resources on that, and parents and families are already familiar with utilizing that app. And then lastly, just like I had mentioned at the beginning, IEP meetings are a great way to share out different resources, whether it's summer camps that are happening or adapted sports that are happening. Really sharing positive stories of students, also the growth of student when it comes to their IEP goals. And also maybe thinking about visualizing each student's progress, whether it's a pre and post picture or pre and post video that you're showing to families, or whether it's a line or a bar graph, just showing that progress and really visualizing their students' progress within adaptive PE.
So just to summarize, Adam hit on in the beginning the importance of building the community, and then we kind of provided those practical resources and ways that you can connect with families and hopefully ensure that our students continue being active in the time that they're not with us. We wanted to open it up to you all to see if you'd like to share in the chat or raise a hand to share how you might connect with families if there was something that we didn't cover.
And while you are doing that, Brad will attach this slide here, but these are just different links to some of the things that we talked about, templates that you can use as you're thinking about developing those connections with families.
The recorded presentation and the slides will be sent out this week in an email to everybody who registered. So you will have all this wonderful information. Does anybody have any questions? You gave them everything they needed to know.
I hope so, or we hope so.
Appreciate you both.
See if I can.